All right, I think here we are. This is Investing in Georgia. Today we are going to go over the purchase and sale agreement for the state of Georgia. We're going to go over the GAR forms. This is the Georgia Association of Realtors form. This is what you can expect if you are writing a contract to purchase a house or you are selling a house. This is what they will probably send you. There are other contracts. This is the primarily one the agents are going to use, called the GAR forms. All right, so let's dive in. It's fun stuff. You're going to see me disappear and go to the corner of your, oops. Nope. Hey, am I here? All right. Thought I would do this live because I don't like editing. All right. Purchase and sale agreement. Let me make this bigger for ya. So this is all obviously Georgia specific information, as I am a Georgia licensed realtor and contractor. I have built houses. I've flipped many houses, renovated them, had rental properties. My contact information is below if you want to see if we can work together. If you have any questions on how we, yeah, you get that. All right. So yeah, now I need to go. You do not want me as your tech support though, in case you haven't noticed that. It's also Monday morning. At 7:30. All right, purchase and sale agreement. We're going to start off the offer date. The person that writes the offer the first time, this is where the date's going to go, right up top. It's going to come from the very first offer. The purchase and sale, you can say the buyer and the seller, etc. The address of the house, the city, the county, and the zip code, the MLS number. This is the number if it's listed online that use the FMLS, Georgia MLS, or whatever local MLS you might be, as long as you're in Georgia. Yeah, I assume that'd be anywhere else, but this is all GAR forms. So tax parcel ID number, and we're also going to have the legal description. So there's going to be a few different, let's see. So the condos, if you have that, you're going to have its own thing. Then you got, so the legal description is going to be one attached in the exhibit hereunto, or number 3, which is the ideal way to go, the same as the way at last transferred, and that's usually going to be able to find in the records pretty quickly. Or you can do the whole land lot thing, and this is the very description of that. But generally, if everything normally, you're just going to circle this one, the deed book and the deed page, or check it, shall I say. That's going to be the easiest for an agent to do. The purchase price to be paid, it's going to be off the price this buyer is offering. And the seller's monetary contribution towards closing costs. So this is going to be the requested closing costs covered by the seller. And they're going to offer the date here and the time, well, with possession going. I almost always recommend just do it at closing unless there's some very specific needs for otherwise. We're not going to even get into those. Closing law firm, which is a closing attorney. Holder of earnest money. Generally, it's best to do the closing attorney. You already know who that is. You can do a broker as well. This shouldn't just easier since it's going to go to the closing attorney anyways. Just send it there. And then they're going to send the F510 with, then they're going to send a F511 back saying that they agree to all that. Make it confusing. Basically, it's just the form that's, this is the form that says you're giving this money to the attorney. Then the one they send back is the one that said we agree to do this. Generally speaking. Earnest money. This is how much earnest money is going to be putting down as of offer date or within so many days of closing. I used to always just do the within so many days of binding agreement. Sorry. I've been doing more toward as of the offer date. That way you can just send the money. It makes you look a little bit more serious. Like you got you got all your stuff that you're gonna be easy to work with. You got all your details down, etc. So I've been leaning more towards that. Or you can do it some other way. But generally we want to do it within like two days or 3 days of binding agreement. Because just because this is offered doesn't you're usually gonna go back and forth and not just immediately sign it. All right, due diligence period. Due diligence period of so many days. We are not in the buyer's market we were a few years ago in 2021 and 2022 and around there. So we are back to doing inspections again if you haven't looked in a while. Let's recommend inspections. We are currently in a buyer's market, so do your due diligence. And shall pay directly the seller. Oh, that's the option. If you want to be an option contract, that's kind of next level stuff before we get into that. So the due diligence period is the time when the buyer can cancel the contract for any reason or no reason. Lead-based paint. This is if your house was built before 1978. I have a whole video on lead paint in this form. But if it was any house built before 1978, you have to attach this. And this is going to say your buyer's broker is and the seller's broker is. If you don't know what a difference between a client and a customer and a dual agent and a designated agent are, all you should know is you should be working as a client. So check one unless you really know what all this stuff means. And this also just says the material relationships required to be disclosed by either broker are as follows. If you have a personal relationship, one of the agents has a personal relationship or interest in the property or someone else. Then finally, on the summary of this page, we got the time limit of the offer. So the offer that was offered right here, this is the timeline. You can say by 12 o'clock p.m. on the date of, etc. Then the buyer is going to initial here. So then if the seller agrees, they're going to initial there. Now we're going to go through some pages. To page 2, here we go. I need to set a timer so I know how long in the video to do this. So I can do my page marks. Purchase and sale warranty. The seller warrants at the time of closure. It's going to be good, and title and all that. I'm not going to get into all the details on that. The buyer may examine the title and all that, etc. So the title search, because the attorney represents the lender. So your lender is not going to want to lend on a property without proper title. Directs sorry, I'm doing this all title insurance. You should get title insurance. You should get buyer title insurance and lender title insurance. Learn that one the hard way. Or your lender is going to get title insurance, and they're going to make you pay for it. But you should also get buyer title insurance, just in case. Purchase price to be paid by the buyer. That's the price in U.S. dollars. Closing cost paid. This is all the detail of what the nuances of that as well, because there are limitations to what. Well, most lenders will put limitations on what prices and money can be put into this and by who. And this is going to say who it is. So at closing, buyer shall pay Georgia property transfer tax, the cost for a title search and tax records, and prepare a limited warranty deed. All of their cost fees are related to the transaction. So yeah, the buyer is going to pay the bulk of all the fees. The seller is going to pay for to make everything you need to do to get the title ready to transfer. And if they're not attending the title in person, they have to get all the paperwork together for that. And they also have to get everything, whatever, if there's any fees involved in getting any money owed and pay off some proceeds. Proration, they prorate method of the taxes. So if you transfer, say, I'm just going to make it easy, June 31st, right? June 30th, right in the middle of the year, it's going to be 50-50 who pays all the taxes and all that type of stuff. Hopefully I didn't get the middle of the year, whichever that is. Hopefully I didn't get all that wrong. Closing date and possession, the right to extend the closing date. The unilateral buyer may unilaterally extend the closing date once for 8 days upon notice to seller if either the buyer's mortgage lender or the closing attorney are delayed and cannot fulfill their respective obligations by the date of the closing, provided that the delay is not caused by the buyer. There's a little bit more nuance to that. And that's whether they have a financing contingency or not. Let me double check. You should double check that. If you have a question about that, read this or ask me. Keys and openers, we gotta give all the keys and like garage door openers, etc. With the house, everything is in good shape and working with the devices and fixtures, etc. Like if there's any passwords needed, you have to give them the passwords. Closing law firm. Choose a legitimate law firm that's gonna, number one, reduce your risk a whole lot with some shady stuff. Holder of earnest money. So I recommend making this the attorney just because it's simpler. You can also have it make the broker will do that as well. Real estate broker. For the sake of this, anytime you hear broker, it means agent. Not all agents are brokers, but all brokers are agents. Correct. Broker is kind of like the next higher level, a little bit like more of a management level. For simplicity's sake, earnest money, entitlement of earnest money. If you don't this is when you could get the earnest money. Disbursement of earnest money. This is how it goes out, etc. And I love this word. Interpleader. If an earnest money dispute cannot be resolved in a reasonable time, holder may interplead the earnest money into a court of competent jurisdiction if holder is unsure who is entitled of the earnest money. I just think that's cool. Hold harmless. All parties agree to out of anything that comes from that, any issues they have with the earnest money, as long as they're not acting fraudulent. The buyer's right to inspect the property. He also tells you to inspect the neighborhood. Oh, I just want to highlight one thing. Unless otherwise specified herein, the property is being sold in an as-is condition and with any and all faults. Always remember that in a real estate transaction. If you have any questions, you should do that and answer them in your due diligence. See, you gotta see if it's on the Georgia methamphetamine contact list or whatever. Another quick rule: if it really smells like cat pee, it's not cat pee. Learn that one the hard way. All right. Buyer's responsibility: you need to inspect the neighborhood, all the zoning, all the schools, all the crime, etc. 2. Okay. Buyer's inspection rights continues through closing, so you can do all your research up until you go to closing. Of course, you lose your earnest money deposit after the due diligence period. But buyer inspection and indemnification. Buyer agrees to hold seller and brokers harmless of all claims and damages related to the exercise of the above inspections. So, like, if you're doing all this, you gotta, as long as the owner of the house doesn't have any like known dangers set up, if anything happens, as you're doing your inspection, it's on the buyer. Due diligence period. You know what that is. Seller's duty to disclose. You got to say what anything that's any latent or hidden defects. Warranties transfer anything that you can. Anything that is warranty, you do whatever you can to make sure that transfers over. All right. All agreed upon repairs shall be performed in good and workmanlike manner prior to closing, unless otherwise agreed in writing by the buyer and seller. I've been over this a couple times before. If you always want to disclose everything as much up front as possible, even if it is, obvious. Because for the, I guess, the reason of you want people to know the property condition report before they make an offer, so they know what they're going to find. Because you don't want them to find that out when they have in their due diligence period. Because then they have power, and then they can walk out of the contract or negotiate harder against you on that if you are the seller. I also recommend just getting an inspection, spend like whatever, $300-500, get an inspection prior to even listing. That way you can have it ready and on the counter for any buyers that are going to come by, so they kind of know from the get-go what the inspection report's going to pretty much look like. Every inspector is different, obviously. All right, this will be the brokerage, relationships, and compensation. As I said, if you don't know, you should check for the client, not for the customer, not for any of these other things. If you don't know exactly what they are, there's another form that your agent can give you that can tell you more. But the short answer is, if you don't know what dual agency or acting as a customer, etc., you don't want to do it. They just say how the brokers get compensated. Everything has to be formal, and then go through the attorneys and all that, and be on the documents. Because when you are dealing with this stuff, you are dealing a lot of times. So with Georgia real estate, you're dealing with mortgages, etc. So you're going to have mortgage law, which is all federal. So that's why a lot of this stuff is very structured. All right. Time limit of offer. The time limit of this offer. I said it's kind of obvious. That was on the bottom of that front page. Generally, all notices given should be legible and signed by the party giving the notice. Delivery of the notice, it should be by one of the methods they had set within. Broker is authorized to accept notice for client, except for in the acting and dual agency capacity. The broker representing as a party in a client relationship shall be the authorized agent of the party for a limited purpose of receiving notice, and such notice to any of them for all purposes herein should be deemed to be notice to the party. So what that means is if what the other party tells your agent, that means they told you, and then it's your agent's job to tell you. Remedies of seller. All right, we're going to go through these two. These are kind of, in the event that the agreement fails to close due to default of the buyer, seller's sole remedy shall be to retain the earnest money and full liquidated damages. So that is all the seller can get. They can get the deposit back. So that's exactly why having that good deposit is important. A good deposit and the inspection period. Let's say the three things I always look for in a contract. If you are the seller, look for what's the deposit, what's the due diligence period, and what is the price. Obviously, those are the three things I stick to. That's the most important. Remedies to buyer. In the event that this agreement fails due to the default of the buyer may either one, seek the specific performance of this agreement, say purchase, close the transaction, terminate this agreement upon notice to seller or holder, in which case all earnest money and deposits and other payments buyer has paid towards the purchase of the property shall be returned to the buyer following the procedures set forth herein, and the buyer may pursue any other remedy available at law. So the buyer has a lot more opportunities. It's pretty simple for the seller. They can either they can either basically take your house from you for that agreed on price, or they can do anything else they want, as long as depending on the deal. So basically just going to limit the rights of the broker, and if someone can still be owed a commission if one of the people doesn't go through with it. Because if you do not agree, you can sell it. If you just don't follow through with the deal, the agents you can still owe the agents their commission and the attorney's fees as well. You can owe those as well. Risk of damage to property. If anything happens, you need to make sure to get it repaired. If there's anything that happens in your inspection, condemnation, you shall not be condemned. Don't be selling a condemned house. And you should make sure the buyer knows it's condemned. Consent to share non-public information. That's in the ALTA form. Because obviously they have to go into some detail. Attorneys are going to do a lot of background information. It's not necessarily public, and some of that information will go into both sides of the transaction. Because they'll just be on the financial reports. Delays caused by emergencies. These things happen. They have up to 8 days for a state of emergency. Digital signatures, they are as good as regular signatures. That's what that says. Duty to cooperate. You got to work in timely, good faith. Everybody has to. Timely manner and in good faith. Enter agreement modification, except for any pre-showing compensation agreement or the separate agreement of the payment for the buyer's compensation. That's usually only if you have a for sale by owner. That is a part of this agreement. The agreement constitutes the entire agreement between all parties. So this purchase and sale agreement, this one we're going over is 10 pages long. When we make this offer, all these other documents that you're going to be putting in here, which we'll go into more later, there's going to be a lot of, let me get on the right page. There's going to be a lot of other forms that are part of exhibits to this. This contract and all those exhibits are going to be this document. So it's all one big document. And it grows. Extension of deadlines. No time deadline under this shall be if it's following a Saturday or Sunday or federal holiday. No time deadline under this agreement shall be extended by virtue of it following under Saturday, Sunday, or holidays. So whenever they say like do this within 5-10 days, agents are always like looking at their calendar to see make sure that's like a Monday. Also, things that happen on Monday in real estate generally always seems to happen for those days. So I always try to do it at Tuesday. That way they have it. In my experience, bad things happen on, not bad things. Things go wrong to mess up deals on Fridays, it seems. And then Mondays is when things get canceled for some reason because everyone gives notice on Friday. Like, oh, we can't do it. So I try to do it on Tuesday through Friday. I always try to for that reason. That way they have an extra day to fix things up. For FIRPTA, that's like a foreign investment tax thing. GAR forms, this basically just tells you that you can't sue GAR, Georgia Association of Realtors. It's not our fault. It's their CYA. Governing law and interpretation. The agreement may be signed in multiple counterparts and shall be determined to be original and shall be interpreted in accordance with the law. So, yeah, all these forms together, even if they're not signed at the same time, they are still one document. And so, yeah, okay, we'll get into binding date here in a minute. No authority to bind. The agent or broker cannot bind a contract for you. They cannot sign for you. No recording of agreement. Buyer shall not record or permit to be recorded this agreement or any memorandum or summary thereof in the Office of Land Records. Buyer shall be liable for damages violating the section of the agreement. Nothing here within shall prohibit the buyer from recording a lis pendens as part of the lawsuit. So, I've done this. Let's see. So, sometimes with if a seller didn't follow through with a contract, and the buyer had a contract, they used to just kind of record that contract with the court system. Now they're saying you agree not to do that, and you actually need to like do lis pendens, which is proper, the method to clear up the title, etc. Because basically they did that so to make sure no one else could sell it, no one else could buy it because it was already under contract. That is the improper way to do it, and should be need to actually find a lis pendens, which is file a lawsuit, a legal thing. I'm not an attorney. Notice a binding agreement date. That's the date. The date actually binding is when everyone agrees to it. Objection to binding agreement date. If you do not agree with it, you have 1 day of when the actual date is. To note that on there. Everything should be delivered and clean. We generally consider it the remove all trash, etc. Construction debris should be moved. We always use the common rule of it should be in a room swept condition. Yeah, it doesn't have to be like cleaned, but it needs to be clean. That makes sense. You don't need to like vacuum the whole house or anything. Rules for interpleading this agreement. I don't even want to get into all that stuff. Exhibits shall. Yeah, so. No, this will be a good contract overview. So, handwritten changes shall control over pre-printed or typed provisions. So anything like you write in there, it's gonna control. It's gonna be the word that is followed versus what's in the typed and all that. Exhibits shall control over the main body of the agreement. So if there's anything in the exhibits, they override the original contract. Now, special stipulations shall control over both exhibits and the main body of the agreement, including handwritten changes here too. So special stipulations are another section we are going to get into. I'm still a page behind. Try to follow. Notwithstanding the above, the FHA or VA, that's when you get into government-backed stuff. They're gonna do whatever they gotta do for that one. Everything shall be enforceable even without the signature of the brokers. So even if the people, the buyer and seller sign, the agent doesn't have to sign. But it's still enforceable, I think is the proper legal term. Probably not, but you get the idea. If broker was written any special stipulations herein, the party for whom such special stipulations were written, A, confirms that each special stipulation fully and accurately reflects the party's intentions, and B, accepts each special stipulation as if it were written by such party, and hereby agrees to indemnify the broker who prepared the special stipulations harmless from any and all claims, causes of action, suits. So when you start doing this handwriting stuff, so we have like the real estate have like this, especially with the GAR stuff, you have this, call it a library of like this legal verbiage type things, like statements. And especially if you're writing, if the agent has any special stipulations that they're writing in, etc. Not say physically written, you can also type in physical or stipulations. Basically, they're saying that you can't. If the person has to agree that that's what they really want, and that they know that these special stipulations are kind of changing everything. If broker answers a question of buyer and otherwise describes some aspect of the property or the transaction, buyer is doing so based on the information provided by the seller with an independent knowledge. As I said, I'll go into this in another video as well. It's if what your agent is, they have to get all their information from facts in some way or another. And they have to, if nothing else, like cite where they get this information from. They can't just, it's just a CYA. You can't just go around stating facts without some type of color as to where this information came from. Can't do it all willy-nilly and stuff. Page 8. I think this is the last page of like real writing. Yeah. So we're getting towards the end. Oh, we get to the exhibits. Oh, this is so much fun. Oh, this is survival agreement. I want to dive into this one. So that there are certain things that is that even survive past the closing of this agreement. There's still things that changes that can be made only with regards like the warranty of the title, compensation for the agents. If there's any errors with that, you have to agree to get this, get these things resolved. A lot of taxes, attorney's fees, anything you gotta still resolve them if they weren't caught right at the time. Terminology. I know they say singular versus plural. I'm talking about pronouns and person, people, identities, and corporations, and all that. I'm not going to get into that. No, just time of essence. Every time of essence is an agreement. Time is of the essence of this agreement in all real estate. So if whatever side you're on, you got to be proactive. You got to be responsive. Banking day, let's just say what a banking day is. Binding agreement day, I think we went over that. What a broker is. It can be a broker in this terms can be an agent or an actual broker. Business day, what is a client? What is closing? What is compensation? What is a customer? What is a day? Material relationship. So it's if someone has especially if an agent. This mostly come up if an agent is related to the seller, or the agent is also the owner. So they'll say owner agent or agent related to seller or buyer, etc. Warning to buyers and sellers: beware of cyber fraud. Scammers are really good at what they do. They're getting better at this all the time. Especially when you're doing wiring instructions, make sure to double check, triple, quadruple check everything with the documents and directly contacting the real estate office as well, and closing attorneys. Just to confirm everything, because you don't want all that. You don't want to deal with that fraud. It does happen. Heightened identification procedures to help prevent fraud. Covenant not to sue. There's a lot of fraud out there. There's a lot of things that are set up to prevent this from happening. Limit on brokers' liability. Buyer and seller knowledge that brokers shall under no circumstances have any liability greater than the amount of compensation paid hereunder to broker. Notwithstanding the above, shall have no liability in excess for loss of funds as a result of wire fraud. So your agent, don't have any more recourse upon them than the compensation they are paid, and they don't have responsibility for anything involved with wire or cyber fraud. Made it to the exhibits and addenda. All exhibits and or addenda here on 2 listed below or referenced or made part of this agreement. So this is when you check all the extra fun stuff. This is all the addenda. So usually let's go to try to see what would be in a normal offer, or what is likely to be. So sometimes I'll have a backup agreement contingency to give a formal backup offer from someone. This is the buyer broker compensation exhibit. I don't know if I heard me talk that to myself. Closing attorney acting as holder of earnest money. This is that 510. This is that form. So that you check that here and put, say, exhibit A. And so all these things you want to check: loan, FHA loan, contingency exhibit. They say B, lead paste paint exhibit. You say C. Then each one of those on the form is going to have a. Do I have an example of one? Oh yeah. Here we go. Okay, seller's property disclosure. I don't know. Hold on. Let me make sure I'm getting this in my camera so you can see this. Let me go back out. No, let me go to main. Here we go. See how it says on the top line, seller's property condition statement exhibit. Beep, beep, beep. Beep, beep, beep. Beep, beep. There we go. Quote, unquote. Oh, now I messed up all my documents. Gotta fix that. Then you just write in the letters on that. So, let's go back. I'm getting pretty good at that, aren't I? Getting pretty good at that, aren't I? Alright, oh no, now I'm gonna look. Oh, if you see a dog rolling on his belly in the back, that's treats. He follows me everywhere. Loan assumption, legal description exhibit. So you gotta check all these and you write all them down. And sometimes we'll have all the other little things. You also want to put in the property condition report. I think that should be on. well, all that type of stuff. Special stipulations. Where you're right. Oh yeah, and we want to make sure. And I want the car in the driveway too, for example. It can be anything though. And even additional special stipulations on another form. Page 10 out of 10. Let's see what we got here. This is going to be the easiest. So you buyer signs here, so all the contact information. Buyer signs here, all the contact information. If you have more buyers, there's another form that goes there. This is seller. If you have more sellers, you go there. This is the buyer's broker. So if you're writing an offer, this is all their information. Doesn't have my email address on. Sellers, license, contact information. This is the agent's, the buyer's agent, the seller's agent. And the binding agreement date. The binding agreement date in this transaction is filled in by, is the date of blank and filled in by. So now we are at the very end. So let's go a quick summary back over it. Doesn't make sense to do an overview before you know what's going on. So the front page is where we have a lot of information. This is going to be where all your signing is for the most part. So we got the offer date, where it is, the legal description of it, the purchase price, closing cost, closing date, closing law firm, who has the earnest money and when and where it is, plus the due diligence period, is there lead-based paint, and how are you being represented. And this is the time of the offer that was set, or the offer's date, and this is how long the offer is good for. Then you got the buyer and seller initials. So then you got all your signing and all this stuff. It's just writing. Writing. This is all the CYAs. You gotta do nothing here. Then now we get back into stuff we gotta put in. And then this is where you sign. They've streamlined this a whole lot over time. So let me go back to where, so you can see my pretty little face on my better camera. Make me all... Alright, here we go. So yeah, that's it. If you have any questions, feel free to contact me below. This is Investing in Georgia. My name is Alan. If you have any comments, leave them below. If you have any, please like, share, comment, or subscribe. That's what I meant to say. If you have any questions about Georgia construction or real estate,